Okay, so what do you think, Sam, is the reason for the current, well, let's call it the COVID vaccine policy? You have any idea?
That's a very, very long discourse. If we want to dig into that, it all started changing in April 2020. The first 3, 4 months, the experts were following science. They said mouth masks or face masks are useless. They said the only thing that helps is keep a bit of a distance, wash your hands, and that's about it. That's the only way to keep the transmissions on a low level. Suddenly, it started to change in April 2020 when we saw that there was geopolitical influence starting to play upon this part. And certainly, knowing that from the summer on, all the countries were shouting, "Yeah, the vaccines will. We are going to put all our efforts into developing vaccines." You saw the WHO shifting his narrative,
Mm.
which was quite remarkable. And it's not an independent organization. It claims to be, but let's be honest, it's with everything is politicized. The UN, EMF, World Bank. We have to take that into account. The World Health Organization needs the funding of countries, needs funding of philanthropic organizations to keep its activities going,
Hmm.
which is in normal courses ethically totally responsible. Um, but what we saw happening was that, and we already know, this is not a big secret, that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was the number 2 sponsor of the WHO. Gavi Alliance also liaised to Bill Gates, was number 6. So basically, Bill Gates was on number 1, number 2, number 6. And we all know he has, through all the kinds of hedge funds, he has a big part in basically all the pharmaceutical companies. So you can't prove that there is a causality, but there is certainly a correlation between what was happening and the timeline we saw. So there is, I can't, I, we all, we and our, me, myself and the team all think that there has been a kind of vaccine push towards the WHO as the sole alternative to get out of this crisis, which is, in my opinion, quite a risky game. And the reason why is because if it's ethically responsible vaccinating, as I said before, the people with underlying diseases. And the reverse protection, the basis of the reverse protection is to create herd immunity within the healthy population. And the reason why is because it's much faster than trying to vaccinate everyone. Vaccinations cost a lot of logistics problems, a lot of money, and we have to be honest, we don't know what the midterm and the long-term consequences are of these vaccines. So even if you decide that it's ethically correct to vaccinate people with an underlying disease, it's better for the 70% of the other population to give them the opportunity to gain the infection, to create their own individual immunity, and then you are contracted by the latest mutant. What we see now happening is that the vaccines that are on the market have been made and created based upon the genetical structure of the virus from 8 months ago. We now today see in publications in the Lancet and Nature Medicine that the vaccines have a vaccine efficacy of 0% up to 50%, depending on who gets it. So it isn't a 95% vaccine efficacy like they told everyone. The reality is we are facing a very a vaccine that in some cases is even missing out on the mutants. So this is not the best strategy because you will keep running behind. You always be behind the problem. You will be constantly chasing the problem. If you do it on a natural way and to try to create natural herd immunity, you will always have the latest virus that infects you. So your immune system always be, yeah, it's like an update of a computer. You know, every time you do an update, you get a boost and everything starts running again. And then you are contaminated with the last mutant. So your immune system is up to date. And you can't reach this form of immunity with a vaccine. And the risk we see now, also evidence-based in literature, it's already published. There are two big main concerns: antibody-dependent enhancement and immune escape. And these two have been published now, two articles in Cell Biology and Cell Microbiology, and one in The Lancet and one in the New England Journal of Medicine, already discuss the fact that if people with underlying diseases are being vaccinated, those people already have a problem in creating a good immune response. Secondly, we know that the vaccines aren't that efficient anymore. They are in between 0 and 50% efficacy. So what happens is that the people with underlying diseases getting a vaccine will not have sufficient immune response or develop enough antibodies to be resistant against, certainly not against, the mutants. And we already have 7,000 mutants since the beginning of the crisis.
So, Sam, I'm sorry, Sam. So what you're saying is that for people with underlying diseases, the vaccine will work even less well in comparison to healthy people.
Yes.
Right.
And it might be counterproductive as well, because if they get infected, and that's what the studies also claim now, that they call it antibody neutralization. If they get infected with a recent mutant, their immune system starts overreacting. And this may lead them to, in the worst case, to die. And in the best scenario, they develop the illness quite severely. And they become super spreaders for the people around them. So the main question is, why don't the experts that are in charge in every country abstain from following the most recent scientific based data? Why don't they follow the newest insights we gain? And why do they stick to the paradigm that they have kept going on for a year and a half now? Why do they stick to the fear-based narrative, knowing that the vaccines aren't the big solution? They can add to the solution where they won't solve the problem.
Do you think do you have any ideas yourself what the reason could be why certain scientists are not speaking out?
I think it's a very complex issue. If we start looking back and we look back at the beginning of the crisis, what happened was governments didn't want to. First of all, let's start from the beginning. What happened was December 31st, 2019, China said for the first time, send a letter to the WHO telling them we have something going on here which we can't explain. We have reached a new virus that we can't comprehend at this time. It was 31st of December, New Year's Eve. So there was no news in the world. Everyone was in New Year's Eve mode or Christmas mode. So there was basically no news internationally. What happened was, 7th of January, the WHO for the first time sent out a press release and said there is a new virus coming from Wuhan, China, and we don't know what it is. So what happened was the total world press, because there wasn't any big news at that time, wasn't a big war going on or was anything decent in the media. I saw the press jumping onto this fact. And within a week, it was news from Vanuatu to the North Pole. And this was unseen. I never saw this before. We didn't see this kind of media coverage with SARS. We didn't see it with MERS. We didn't see it with any other, with Nipah. We didn't see it with any other outbreak. It was the first time that the coverage in 2 weeks' time was so huge that I think that's part of what the problem started, when the problem started. So government started to get into some kind of panic state. And what did they do? They took the well-known experts. Every country has a well-known expert. So they started pulling those experts upwards, and they said, okay, now it's your game. We're a government. We don't know how to handle the crisis. It's up to you. Now, the thing is that the most well-known experts in countries are mostly the people who work at big universities, have a lot of PhD students, have a lot of postdoctoral students or postdoctoral researchers. And we all know that the academic field is being sponsored by philanthropic organizations. The same was in my department. We need this money to do research. So what has been a gray zone for the last 50 years, since the governments decided not to support research anymore, or not that much, philanthropic organizations and pharmaceutical industries have started sponsoring universities, which is okay. It's a gray zone, but we need the money to do research. And what we saw happening now is that the experts in every country that came above water to help solve the crisis were people that have been getting a lot of sponsoring from pharmaceutical companies in the past, also from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So you can't deny that there is an intertwine between all those people and the organization sponsoring them. Mm. And then you saw the shift in April. In March, what basically happened there was that the Ferguson projection came from Professor Ferguson from the Imperial College, projecting 40 million deaths. So that was the perfect. That was a perfect fear-based mongering to start upon, because all the world got in a total cramp and said, "Okay, this is serious business. We're all gonna die." So the narrative, the fear-based narrative, was already running for 3 months. Then the Ferguson projection came, and that was the deadlash for everyone. And then you see the experts starting to change their official first discourse, which was basically scientifically based, and said, "Okay, mouth masks don't work. Keep everything. Keep it to washing your hands, sneezing your elbow." Those are very common, practical, and very good solutions. And then it started shifting. Suddenly, we needed to wear face masks. There is no decent evidence to support wearing face masks at all.
Listen to the entire episode of the Immunity Podcast.
Link in the description below.